Hi everyone, so thanks for joining us today for our second in our student training series. This training is going to look at people power and how we can build a movement on our campus and beyond. Just to let you know, we are recording this session. So to introduce myself, my name's James. I know many of you, but I'm the community organiser for students here at Amnesty UK. And I'm also joined by Elaine. Elaine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Elaine. I'm community organising assistant, so I work across the team with different activists and here today to support James with training.
Thanks, Elaine. And there's about 10, 11 of us here today, so it would be nice actually if we do like a quick go around and just introduce ourselves and say what university we're from. And so I'll just go through the list as it's in front of my screen. So Dua, you're first.
Hi, sorry, I'm sat about breakfast. Hi, I'm Dua. I'm at the University of Bradford and I'm on the Fund Committee.
Cool, thanks Dua. And Abby?
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm from Kingston University in London and I also sit on the board of directors of Amnesty UK.
Thanks, Abby. And Eleanor?
Hi everyone, I'm Eleanor. I'm from the University of Birmingham and I don't do anything in particular special.
All of our Amnesty students are special, Eleanor, don't worry. Mirella?
Hi, I'm Mirella. I'm from Middlesex University, London. And yeah, I'm just in the Amnesty student group, but not like anything interesting. And hi, everybody.
Hey, Mirella. Don't worry, everyone here is interesting, I can guarantee. We'll find out anyway. Serla?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I go to Queen's University Belfast and I'm part of the Amnesty steering group, my local Amnesty group in my uni.
Thanks, Stella. And I think it's Maud.
Hi, I'm Maud and I'm at Durham University.
Cool. Hi, Maud. And Justine?
Hi, I'm Justine. I attend Edinburgh University and I'm on the stand committee too.
Great. Hey, Justine. Catherine? Catherine, are you able to unmute?
Hi, sorry. I'm a law student at the University of Gloucestershire and I haven't started a group yet, but I'm planning to.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining, Catherine. And then finally, Zach.
Hello, Zach here. I'm a law student at Middlesex University, London, and I'm the president of the Amnesty student group here.
Great. Thanks so much for joining, everyone. It's really nice to see so many familiar faces, and I don't know if it's as sunny where you are as it is here, but thanks for joining us on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The session will be about 2 hours long and we'll have a break in between. I think we might actually finish a little bit before 4, but we definitely shouldn't overrun. So with that in mind, I'm just going to run through a few ground rules for today's session. So first of all, please just keep yourself muted when you're not speaking. It's just to help with background noise, that kind of thing. Please be respectful of each other and mindful when you ask questions, especially if someone is talking about a kind of a lived experience or something that has like personally happened to them. Please speak slowly and clearly, just so we can all hear each other well, and try not to talk over each other. It's also good to just like identify yourself and introduce yourself when we go into different breakout rooms. I know we've just done that in the go around, so we should feel a bit more familiar. Finally, ask for clarification. If there's anything you don't understand, either type it into the chat box or you can put your hand up. You should be able to see both of those functions kind of towards the top of your screens, if you're not that familiar with Teams. If you're really stuck, just unmute yourself and shout out. No need to, there's no need to feel like if you can't find the functions, don't worry about just jumping in. There's zero tolerance to hate speech or hateful actions. And then we will be asking everyone to provide feedback at the end of the session as well. So please do that. Great. Oh, Alma, I'm so sorry. somehow completely missed you when I was running through the list. Alma, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
It's no problem, it happens. Yeah, I'm Alma. I'm also on the STAN committee with Justine and with Dua, and I'm studying at the University of Edinburgh.
Great, thanks, Alma. I'm so sorry, I feel quite embarrassed now. So, in order to kind of get used to speaking to each other and also the breakout rooms, I'm just going to do a quick icebreaker. So we're going to break you into groups of 3 or 4, and I want everyone to take the first minute to find an object in the room that you're in that somehow represents you. And then you each have 1 minute to present that object to each other in your breakout. So you can start looking around your room while I start figuring out the breakout rooms for everyone. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Alma, Dua, and Mirella, what was the most interesting object that someone had in your room?
A good question.
They were all interesting. We had a mug, we had some tangled up jewelry, and we had a lava lamp.
Lava lamp, love it. That's pretty retro. Whose was the lava lamp?
Obviously me, because I'm old.
Mirella, come on.
Yeah,
well, I've got a lava lamp as well, although sadly not in this room. So
amazing.
Right, so looks like the breakout rooms all worked as well. If you do have any technical issues when you're in the breakout rooms, because we'll be using them quite a bit in the session, you can come back to the main chat and then kind of type in the chats, and then I will see that. So just let me know if you do have any technical issues. So I just want to run through what the learning outcomes of today's session are. So the first half of the session, we're going to be exploring power and the different types of power and how we can build it on our campus. And then the second half of the session, we're going to be looking at a community organising technique called one-to-ones. The purpose and benefits of having one-to-ones and hopefully getting you to all feel confident in having those. So let's start by talking about power. What I'd like to do is if everyone could type in the chat box your definition of power. What do you think power is, or what does when you think of power, how would you define it? I'll just give you a minute or so to think about it and then write in the chat. Okay, so we've got quite a few people have said influence in others, so the ability to influence other people, the position, being in a position to make a change, being in the capacity to influence or direct others, the ability to be yourself and do as you wish without any barriers. Some really good definitions here. The ability to influence other people, great. So a lot of people are kind of viewing power as the ability, to almost like change someone else's mind, to influence someone. I really like Dua's though about the ability to be yourself and do as you wish without any barriers. That's a bit more of like a personal or like viewing power about oneself, not just also others. Just wait for any more definitions. So how we view power is simply the ability to do or to act. And because of this, power is therefore neutral. It's neither a good nor bad thing, but of course it can be used for both, as I'm sure we are all aware and all know and have probably experienced as well. And sometimes progressives or people acting for social change, like all of us, can shy away from this concept of power because it's often portrayed as something that might be a bad thing, or we only view its misuse, the misuse of power, and we often see ourselves as campaigning against the powerful. But what we've seen is that globally, there's been a big pushback on human rights, and human rights are coming increasingly under fire from governments and corporations across the world. Whether that's governments like in Hungary trying to turn back the clock on LGBT rights, what we saw last year in the US with police attacking protesters and the killing of people of color and black men and women in the US. And in the UK, we see the demonization of do-gooders or lefty human rights lawyers who are trying to stop issues like the persecution of migrants. And the thing is, none of this is secret, none of this is new. And what we've seen is that telling the truth is simply no longer enough. I think we used to say that, we had to expose these human rights abuses, we had to expose the violations that are happening around the world. But we all know what's happening in China with the persecution of Uyghur Muslims. We all know the crackdown on women's rights, and we've all seen the violence against women been what's happened here in the UK and in London in the last week. We know that these human rights violations are happening, and it's not just about telling people they're happening, but it's about turning them, ordinary people like us, using our power to turn these things into issues that governments and corporations have to deal with. It's not just about telling people, but it's about using our collective power to make a change on these issues. And that's why we really want to focus on, in this session, but also with our work, about building power amongst people and using our collective power, which often is termed people power. And we'll talk about the different definitions of power in a minute. So that's why we define it as quite a simple definition, simply the ability to do or to act, because we believe that everyone has power and collectively we can utilize that. So I'm going to put you back into breakout rooms, and I'll keep the breakout rooms as they were. And I want you to think about a powerful person, group, or organization. And I want you to think about what makes those people powerful or that group powerful. And you'll just have about 5 minutes to do this. So it's going to be quite a quick exercise. So yeah, try and pick the person, group, or organization quite quickly, and then spend most of your time talking about what actually makes them powerful. Okay, I'm going to pop you into rooms now.
Okay.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm going to pick on someone from each room just to feedback what they discussed. So Justine, how about your room? Who did you discuss and what did you think made them powerful?
We discussed about the UN, so a very big organization. And I think Abigail talked a lot about how countries have voluntarily signed up to the UN and they hold power from countries attending it and a collective of countries. But then at the same time, caveats to that power because they don't actually any methods of what is decided at the UN and everything. And so it's a really interesting, and I think it's a bit too complex to discuss in just 5 minutes.
Yeah. I'm sure loads of people's dissertations have been on how powerful the UN are, or can the UN wield its power. But a really interesting one to pick up actually, because it combines, I think, lots of different types of power. Serla, how about your group? What did you discuss and why did they have power?
We discussed a couple examples. One of them was Donald Trump, and obviously originally he was in power, in a position of power, but also even when he left, as we very clearly saw, that because of his very staunch supporters, he was able to mobilize such a huge group. But there was also a great suggestion of that Gen Z is powerful, that more than ever that people have, like, I think it was Catherine said that, like, they won't tolerate things, and social media has been giving people like a voice to like showcase their power.
Interesting. That's a really nice one. I like the Gen Z one. And then the final group, Alma, what did you discuss?
We were actually talking about amnesty, and we said what were the main points. That we think because there were so many successful campaigns in the past, people are more likely to get involved now and to think that the future campaigns are also going to be successful, and that even people who don't really know about what amnesty does or what amnesty is, the name still has a lot of power. And just yeah, I think that was the main points.
That's really interesting, like brand, almost like brand power. Yeah. Great. So we like to think about power, or you can think about power in these three ways. Just change the slide, apologies. Financial power, positional power, and people power. And this isn't, this is quite a rudimental breakdown of power, and it's definitely a lot more complex than this. But I think it's a useful kind of framework for us to look at. So financial power is the power that money gives you. And so I thought it also was interesting when you talked about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's power definitely originated with financial power, being in real estate, working in real estate. Actually, if anyone knows the background of Donald Trump, inherited a large fortune from his father, from his family. So they have like hereditary financial power. The second is positional power. And to continue that example, Donald Trump then got an incredibly, sorry, I'll use my words properly. Donald Trump came into a place of really, his positional power was incredibly large because he was effectively the head of state in what is often viewed as the most powerful, the president of the US is often viewed as the most powerful person in the world. Whether or not that is true, it's often a perception. And his positional power was the kind of the rank that he was given. And then the final piece of power is people power. And this is kind of the power that numbers give you. And what's really interesting actually about Donald Trump is that he's starting to use people power. The Trump movement is now most of its power comes from the base that they built through people. And it's often not the kind of people power that we would like to think of, because I think we often view people power as a force for good, a force that supports human rights, and a force that we would support. But I think we do need to recognize there are definitely elements of people power which aren't always good. Like we said before, power is neutral. It can be used for both good and bad. And I think financial, positional, and people power can be used for both good and for bad. But more often than not, financial power can often be used to exploit. It's the kind of power that enables big corporations, whether that's Amazon, Uber, or we see in the UK organisations like Sainsbury's or Tesco's, using their financial power to override workers' rights, for their beef or from their beef to come from like deforested parts of the Amazon, in particular the Tesco's case. So their financial power enables them to kind of give themselves like a stake in the market and to abuse human rights in a way that maybe a smaller organization with less financial support would be able to do. Positional power is probably the most straightforward, and it's the kind of power that enables an MP to vote on legislation, but we're not able to. And, we live in a democratic society where laws are passed by those who have given a certain amount of positional power. But people power is kind of the power that I think we can all utilize as part of amnesty. And it's the kind of power that, for example, enabled apartheid to be ended in South Africa. It's the kind of power that has seen abortion being legalized in places like Northern Ireland and also in South America, like in Argentina. And it's a power that often is being utilized to support human rights. And I just wanted to show a video of a story which I really resonate with or really like about people power that was used here in the UK to stop fracking. And Elaine's going to share in the chat a link to the video. It's about 5 minutes long. So if everyone just wants to mute themselves, watch the video, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes because it won't play that nicely through Teams. And we can have a little conversation about people's reflections from the video. So I will pause, mute my mic if everyone wants to watch the video, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes. Hi everyone, so that should be enough time for everyone to watch the video. Abby, you said you loved the fracking nanas. What did that video make you feel?
It just shows like true activism, and where like that's how I started out in Amnesty. I started out in grassroots activism, and that's how I see Amnesty always being in things like that. So, and yeah, I just love seeing people come together, and the fact that I don't know, I just love their outfits, love what they do. I love them sitting and knitting, like I just everything about it. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, since that video was made, basically a month or two later, in November 2019, the UK government said that fracking is dead in the UK. They're basically a moratorium on fracking, which is like a temporary ban. But since then, there's been no attempt at fracking in the UK, which is an amazing success because that is definitely a campaign or movement which had to fight a lot of financial and also positional power, because the government in charge was very supportive of fracking, and also you've got the fossil fuel industry, which is incredibly powerful through its resource and through its financial, through its finances. So incredible that we have a really very real example of how people power can work. What did anyone else think of the video? What did it make people feel? Eleanor?
It made me quite emotional, actually, just because I think it's been a really long week. And I think getting to watch a video of just like people coming together and showing that change can happen, and like really believing in the community and the power of the community, was like really lovely. And I think it is really powerful. And I think it's exactly what we need to remember at the moment, is that like, I think especially with lockdown, where we can't see other people and we can't protest together in that way, to try and remember that that community still exists. We just have to access it in different ways. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Totally, it's kind of surreal watching that video and remembering that you can. There were times where like hundreds of people could get together like in one space, but like you say, I think that community is still there. We just have to access it in different ways. So we've got one more kind of exercise before we have our break. Oh, apologies. So what I want to talk about now before we have a short break is the power to change someone's mind. And we actually, most people, when they wrote a definition of power early on in this session, said power is about influencing other people. And I want you to think about, when was the last time someone influenced or convinced you? So when was the last time someone convinced you to do something or changed your mind on an issue? Just either jot it down in your head or write it down if that's easier. And also write down who convinced you. I'm just going to pick on a few people to share what that issue was and who that person was. Catherine, would you mind sharing when was the last time someone convinced you to do something or change your mind, and who that person was?
So I had a gap year that obviously was disrupted by the pandemic, and I was meant to go to Bournemouth Uni, but I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And it was quite a stressful time actually, but my mum's best friend convinced me to apply to Gloucester Uni, which is like the uni in my like hometown, so I didn't have to move, and it was the best decision I've ever made. So yeah.
Amazing. And you said it was your mum's best friend as well who convinced you?
Yeah.
What kind of, if you don't mind me asking, because I know it's, you know, quite personal, family and friends, but what kind of relationship do you have with your mom's best friend? Is it someone like you know quite well, or?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, they work together, and like I babysit her kids and stuff like that. So yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. Maud, would you mind sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't really think of one, but after, was it Elma who just said that? Sorry, I didn't catch the.
Oh no, it's Catherine.
Oh, Catherine, sorry. After Catherine mentioned that, I kind of thought about my own experience. Like with uni, I got my results and I still didn't know where I wanted to go. And one of my friends was basically like convincing me, I'd say, or influenced me to go to Durham and choose the uni I went to. And obviously, I'm very glad that I listened to her and kind of took the plunge and went because I really enjoy it.
Amazing. And is that like a good friend or who?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing, Maud. I'm going to pick one more person. Dua, do you want to share?
So I can't think of anything, but I think that's because I'm really easy to convince on things. So I think of anything. I feel like if someone has a valid point, I'm very like, okay, yeah, fair enough, and I'm happy to see things from their point of view. But I can't think of anything really prominent, and I'm trying.
Do you think of anything like trivial, Dua? Like even if it's like.
I've been convinced to go ice skating, even though I hate the idea of a fear of ice. But yeah, I've somehow been roped into that, and I agree. I get roped into a lot of things, so that's my trivial thing that I've been roped into doing. So nothing major, but little things, yeah.
No, trivial things are really important as well. Who convinced you to go ice skating?
My friend Tom.
Cool. And like, are you good friends with Tom? How long have you known Tom?
Yeah, but he's like one of my best friends. I've known him since the start of uni. He thinks it will help me combat my fear of ice. So yeah, that's why we're doing it.
Nice. Thanks for sharing, Dura. And actually, that example really articulates the point, as does both Catherine and Maud's as well. So most of the time when we change our mind or are convinced of something, the person who has done that convincing or has changed our mind is someone who we already know and have a relationship with. So Catherine, in your case, it was like your mom's best friend, but who it sounds like you have quite a close relationship because you babysit their kids and maybe someone who's been around in your life for quite a long time. And then Maud and Dua, like yours are like kind of different ends of the spectrum in terms of like seriousness. Like one is about where you want to go to university and one is about ice skating. But both of those examples were like, it was a good friend. It was like a close friend who convinced you to do that. And I want you to think about if your best friend comes up to you and says, I really want to go on this demonstration, like, will you come with me? And you kind of know it's happening and you're like, I was kind of make plans that day, but I'm not really sure if like the demonstration is the thing I want to go on. But if your best friend or a really close friend is like, this is really important to me, will you come with me or will you go on the demonstration? I would say like what is the percentage chance that you would go on that demonstration? Probably like, you know, maybe like 70, 80, 90%, like quite high. But if you were walking down through university campus past the library and someone reached out and they gave you a leaflet for that same demonstration and you just looked at the leaflet, what is the likelihood that you would change your plans on that Saturday afternoon to go on that demonstration based on a stranger giving you a leaflet? Or even if that stranger spoke to you for 5 minutes about the demonstration? I would hazard a guess, for most people, it's a much, much lower chance. You know, like 20%, maybe less. We did this session the other day and someone said 5% chance that they'd be convinced by a leaflet. But the point is, whether it's a really trivial thing or a really important thing, we very, very rarely change our mind when a complete stranger is trying to convince us. Whether it's watching Question Time and we see a politician on the TV talking about an issue, or whether it's someone convinced you to go ice skating. I'm sure if someone popped a leaflet through your door saying free ice skating this weekend, you'd have probably popped it in the recycling and you'd have never have gone. And you know, what's really important about using this power, using people power, is the way that we build people power is through relationships, through building relationships with people. And to put that into like a really practical sense, I'm sure that you all have an experience or an example of like when you went to a meeting on a, you know, whether that's an amnesty meeting or a meeting on another like social justice issue, or you went to that demonstration, and basically the only reason you went is because someone who you already had a relationship with, you were close to, invited you. And the good news is we don't need to rely, you know, all of these examples that you gave are quite people who are quite close to you, but we can actually build these relationships from the ground up. We don't need to, I think too often, what we end up doing within our amnesty groups, and certainly what I did when I was at university, is it becomes like quite a close-knit group of friends, but then you struggle to engage people outside of that friendship group, because you're not really building relationships with anyone else outside of the group. You're just maintaining that personal relationship you have with people you already know, friends from your course, friends from like maybe your accommodation. And you might have people come along because they've seen like a poster or something, but they often don't come back regularly, and they might not take like a commitment. And in order to get people to take that commitment, to come back regularly to things, and to really, you know, give some of themselves and their time to your cause, to amnesty or another thing that you're working on, you really need to build up like a relationship with that person. And one way that we can build relationships with people is by having one-to-ones with them. And that's something we're going to talk about after the break. Great, okay. Everyone is back. From what I can see, or most people are, which is great. Hope everyone had a good break. So, as I kind of said before the break, we are going to talk about something called one-to-ones. And one-to-ones are a tool that I think all of you can utilize and start using straight away to help build relationships. So what is a one-to-one? A one-to-one is a tool that we can help to, like I said, build relationships, and they're effectively a conversation between two people, but they're conversations that have a purpose and also outcomes. So the purpose of one-to-ones can kind of be broken down into like three areas. So first is to find out what that person's interests are. And you might categorize that as the issues that they care about. And I don't just mean like human rights issues, although that is a large part of our work with Amnesty, but like what are the issues, what do they care about? And you'll probably find that people have like one or two like really burning like desires or passions, issues that they that they really care about, and what motivates them. So that's the second point, is like, what are those people's motivations? Motivations can look like a whole host of things. It can look like people are motivated by wanting to make friends. People are motivated by their career, by feeling like they're progressing to the next stage. People might be motivated by doing well at their academic work at university. They might be motivated by praise. They might be motivated by discipline. You know, some people work well or commit to something because they want to be praised for it, whereas other people kind of prefer the stick rather than the carrot. As well as these things, like the overarching purpose of one-to-ones is really to build authentic relationships. And you know, these may or may not become friendships. And I think there's almost like a little bit of a separation between the two, but it's about building authentic relationships. Doesn't mean you need to become like best friends with everyone you have a one-to-one with, but it does mean you probably will become friendly with them. You will have a relationship where you trust each other, where you respect each other. And I think that's really important to like cultivate when we're having one-to-one conversations with people. One-to-ones don't have to follow a set structure, but they can do if you find that easier. And I'm not going to give you a set structure, but we are going to have time to practice a one-to-one, and you'll be able to reflect on that, kind of like what worked for you, how you might phrase it differently, or how you might go about having your one-to-one differently in future. There's a few things like a one-to-one isn't, and I think there's like two distinctions. One is it's definitely not an interview. One-to-ones aren't like a one-sided Q&A. It shouldn't just be about asking one person a set, you know, some set questions and expecting a response to each of those. Really, a good one-to-one should feel like a mutually beneficial conversation between two people. And you will go in there like with certain questions in mind that you might want to ask and to steer a conversation, but it definitely shouldn't feel like that person's been interviewed. And the second is they're not just a casual chat with a friend, although you can definitely have one-to-ones with a friend. They are different from just like a casual chat over coffee, and it's because we're looking for them to have those purposes, to find out what those person's interests are, what their motivations are. And we talked about finding out, as well as the interests and motivations, having some kind of outcome from your one-to-one. So some examples that one-to-ones might provide for you as Amnesty students are an invitation to come to an event or an upcoming meeting. So the end of the one-to-one, you found out that this person is really interested in women's rights, and you're organising a talk on the Let's Talk About Yes campaign in a couple of weeks' time. So you invite them to that meeting. Or vice versa, they know you're really interested in workers' rights and they're connected to the union, UCU on campus, and they invite you to come along to their next meeting to talk about how you might collaborate between Amnesty and UCU. A one-to-one might end in an introduction to another personal group. You're really interested in this topic. I know someone who's also really interested in campaigning on this issue. You two should meet. And I'm going to introduce you over email or WhatsApp and be like, you two should have a chat. You two should have a one-to-one with each other. Or it might simply be a commitment to a future one-to-one. One-to-ones are things you can have fairly regularly with someone, or they might be something that you only have like a one-off. It really depends on kind of who the person you're having a one-to-one with is and kind of where the conversation goes. And if you figure it's something that is useful to kind of continue that relationship and to build it a bit more. Sometimes you might have a one-to-one with someone and you're like, this has been really useful. I found out what they're interested in. I found out their motivations, but they don't really overlap with mine or our groups in any way. So it was nice to get to know that person, but it's not something I'm going to continue. You might have a one-to-one, which is like, we only had like 45 minutes to chat and we could have talked so much more. There's so much overlap between our interests and what motivates us as people. Like, although there's nothing really clear for them to come to or for me to go to off the back of this meeting, I really want to have another one-to-one with them. So that's always, I always think it's a good, almost like a fallback. If you're like, this has been really positive, but I'm not quite sure where this is going, have another one-to-one. It doesn't have to be the next week. It could be in a month's time, but just have another chat with them and kind of, unpack a bit more kind of what their motivations and interests are. And what you're really looking for is that overlap between kind of your interests and their interests. What is the common ground and where could you possibly work together? So that's kind of like an overview of one-to-ones. And one-to-ones, the only way to get comfortable having one-to-ones is to have them. So that's what we're going to spend kind of the next 15, 20 minutes doing, is actually in pairs having a one-to-one with someone else in this group. And I know that some people here know each other quite well, so we'll try and mix up the groups a little bit so people maybe chat to someone a bit new. So to help steer your conversation, here's some like prompt, almost like questions or things to embed into your conversation. So find out like why that person came here to this training, and as part of that, like why are they part of Amnesty and how did they get involved in Amnesty? What are the issues that they care about? And what takes up their time or their headspace? Is it work? Is it studying? Is it campaigning? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it other interests? When we think about interests and motivations, we should really be thinking kind of big picture, like not just about their Amnesty work or being part of like a human rights organization, but actually like if you spend most of your time chatting about your dissertation topics or what their family or home life is like, that's also absolutely fine. It doesn't need to, you don't need to feel like you keep needing to steer the conversation back to Amnesty or to human rights issues if you found that the conversation and the interest is somewhere else. And what I find really interesting is if people here can figure out some form of next step with that person. So we're quite geographically spread out. and obviously we're not in person, but I think there's still some real potential here for us to build some like clear next steps with someone who you meet today in your one-to-one. Does anyone have any questions while I just kind of set up the rooms to get started? Please just pop your hand up or jump and ask any questions. Okay, I've got you all broken down into perfect. Okay, so I'm going to put you into breakout rooms and we're going to come back in about 20 minutes. I will give you about a 10-minute warning halfway through as well. This isn't an exercise. Some of you may have done something called active listening, and this is a bit different to that. So I'm not expecting one person to speak for 10 minutes and then the other person to speak for 10 minutes and you just listen. It definitely is a conversation. So like exchange questions backwards and forwards and yeah, really have a conversation with each other rather than like 2 interviews back to back. I'm going to start the rooms now. So you're going to pop into your breakouts with one other person. Great. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to go around the groups and yeah, just to hear how that went. What did you learn from the other person? Like, what are their interests? But also really like to hear, like, did you find that one-to-one easy? Did you find it difficult? Did the conversation flow? And finally, did you have any next steps? Oh, Catherine has to go, not to worry. Thanks so much for joining us. Abigail is amazing. Well, that is exceptional feedback. Right, so I think the first group was Serla and Hanifa. Serla and Hanifa, do you want to, yeah, let me know, how did it go? What did you find out from the other person?
Hello?
Hi, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I was just, yeah, I found out that she lives in Ireland. Also that the specific thing she's passionate about in human rights is the children's rights. And what motivates her is regarding purpose also, and the fact that she could, even though she can't do as much, she can still do change by speaking up, making awarenesses and campaigning, fundraising, even though she can't actually like maybe donate as much, or, you know, that motivates her to just feel like even if she can't change the world, she can change at least one child's life. Yeah.
Amazing. And did you have any like did you find out you had any like common interests or similarities?
Yeah, in regards to me and her feeling like we have to do our part in the world and that we're very lucky and blessed. Like everything depends on where you were born and what family you were raised in. So we just feel like we're lucky in regards to, and then we have to do our part, me and her, like just, you know, in terms of regarding the purpose and making change, we were kind of the same. Yeah.
Great. Serla, do you have anything to add?
No, I think she did a good like summary, and I think yeah, I thought we had a very nice chat, and look forward to talking with her again sometime.
Oh, great. That's yeah. I was gonna say, did you come on to like any next steps, or like was there like a conclusion to your chat?
No, because she was like in the middle of saying something, and the breakout room ended. So, but I would like to.
That's really nice to hear. I'm sorry. It's not like on Zoom where you get the 60-second countdown. It just like is quite abrupt, the ending. So I do apologize if other people were cut off as well. Hopefully people did get their warnings, but I do know it. Yeah, a bit strange with Teams. Abby, Catherine's left, so only say nice things. But how did your one-to-one go?
Yeah, ours was really good. It was interesting because both of us, we don't really want to try and make ourselves available for extra stuff because we already do quite a bit. So Catherine does a lot of stuff on women's rights at the United Nations, and is actually in a couple of weeks virtually speaking at the United Nations, which is amazing and something that I've never done, but I find so cool. And as I've said previously, I sit on the board of directors, and also I chair the activism subcommittee at Amnesty UK. So I'm pretty busy already, and I also recently took over the chairing of a local Amnesty group. So we're both pretty busy, like time wise, so we didn't want to like make ourselves available for things, but we definitely gave each other like we had very good info and pointers on different things, and like things that we can read in our spare time that we found very interesting on the specific subjects. She's very into media law, which is, and so that like music industry and that sort of stuff, so I thought that was very interesting as well. But yeah, she was really amazing, so much to learn, and yeah.
Amazing. And it sounds like you felt, even though you maybe feel like you don't have time to give to something else, you got a lot out of it in terms of like learning about new things and kind of finding out new resources.
Yeah, definitely. And I've got a whole load of new things to read now, so that's great.
Fantastic. Dura and Zach, how did your one-to-one go? Oh, Zach's stuck in the lobby.
Oh, that's fine.
Zach,
yeah,
are
no,
you...
I think...
Sorry, Dura. Do you want to go?
Oh, no, it's fine. I don't know whether he's back in the chat or...
Yeah, Zach, are you back in the room?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. As soon as the thing it just cut off.
Well, we're just going through the groups and asking people like how their one-to-one went. So it's just actually got to your and Dura's group. But yeah, Dura, do you want to go first? How did your one-to-one go?
I think we had a really interesting one-to-one. I think we had a lot in common, especially like we've both started off like Amnesty groups at our unis, so that was it's good. It's interesting to see how other people like have handled the pandemic at their unis, and we've kind of talked about how we want to engage more people and what like our reasons behind wanting to join Amnesty. So that was very good, and yeah, just the perks of being a final year student. So.
Fantastic. Zach, is there anything to add?
I found it very interesting how she developed her Amnesty group, and how she just got really interested in it over time. I also got some small tips on how to sort of like engage students as well.
Great. Yeah, you're both, you know, kindred spirits setting up a new group at your universities. And so, yeah, great you were able to swap some tips. Justine and Morella?
Yeah, I'm really sorry, Justine. I didn't ask for your pronouns.
Oh, I use she, her. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, Justine is passionate about like environmental friendly fashion and also policies, which I think is really, really interesting. And I think we had like a really, really interesting chat. But we chatted about like a lot of like more like general things, and not so much like focused on like passion, I guess.
Great. And Justine, is there anything to add? How did you find it?
Yeah, Marilla, sorry, I forgot to ask your pronouns as well. What are they?
Also she, her, thank you.
Yeah. No, Marilla was super fascinating. We talked about everything from like queer nightlife in Vienna to how Marilla actually worked with Amnesty before. And yeah, how she helps like start the group at Middlesex as well. And also like the ups and like the pros and cons of everything being remote at the moment. Like, for example, I was talking about how I kind of felt sorry for many of our members who were in their final year who couldn't participate in person, but then at the same time, Marilla can participate in her Amnesty meetings because she's located remotely from Middlesex at the moment in Bournemouth. So yeah, it was a really interesting conversation.
Amazing.
Yeah, and we also like swapped Instagram, so we're definitely going to be in touch and talk some more, because it was really, really lovely chat. So thank you very much, Justine.
I feel all warm and fuzzy vibes from your call. Elma and Eleanor, the final group. How did you find your one-to-one?
It was really lovely, yeah. I guess we both chatted a bit about our motivations for getting involved in activism, and like how we got involved with Amnesty and how involved we are. We also swapped a lot of book recommendations and had a chat about books, because it turns out we both really like reading, and have swapped Instagram so that we can talk about the book recommendations that we gave each other. But yeah.
That's great. And a question I forgot to ask the other groups, but did the 20 minutes go fast, or did it go quite slowly? Yeah. What did you think about that?
I mean, I think it went quite quickly, yeah. I really enjoyed it as well, because I think when you're at meetings like this, you kind of see everyone and you're like, oh, they're so cool, but I can't really talk to them. Whereas I feel like now there's like a really firm foundation to be built on, and yeah, I definitely feel like we could have talked for a lot longer. And if I'm ever up in Edinburgh, we said that we'd go for a coffee or something.
Amazing. And Alma, how did you find the one-to-one?
Yes, I very much agree. I was very happy about the book recommendations I got, and the fact that I will be able to talk about the books. And yeah, it was really lovely. I think I missed just catching up with people I didn't know before. So that was a really nice thing to be able to do. And Amazing. It went really quickly for me as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine, most of you, maybe when you saw that slide and it said you're now going to do this for 20 minutes, like people a bit like, 20 minutes? That's quite a long time to do like one exercise, as it were. But I think it like absolutely flies by. And, when I brought people back, I could tell that conversations were still flowing, because I kind of caught the end of people's conversations. So yeah, I'm glad that it felt like it went by quite quickly. Whenever like I'm having like a one-to-one, usually I would aim for like between like half an hour and 45 minutes. I think it's like a really nice time, especially if you're having them regularly. Sometimes the first one, though, you might spend like 60 minutes or longer, because you're really getting to know someone. Okay, we're nearly near the end of the session, and it feels like everyone felt they had like a positive experience with their one-to-one, which is really good, and I think really important. And we're going to move on to the next steps in a moment. But before we do, I am going to ask now if we can just take a few minutes to fill in the feedback survey that Elaine's going to share in the chat. And that's because this session is like a bit of a pilot. If anyone joined us a month ago as well, that session in this one is kind of a new set of training that we're developing. And so we really want to get people's feedback so we can kind of make this session as good as it can be. So please do fill it in constructively. Put what you liked, but also there's things you didn't like, please add those in. And I'll give everyone about 3 or 4 minutes to start filling in the feedback survey, and then we'll just do the next steps to wrap up, and we'll finish before 4 o'clock. Okay, thanks for people who've completed that or kind of just wrapping up. And do come back to the survey after we've gone through the next steps, but this bit will only take a couple of minutes. So the next steps from this session, and they probably not surprisingly, but really we are encouraging you to go out and have one-to-ones. I hope you've seen, how beneficial it was to have a one-to-one. Often, in this group with a stranger who is often based, or for most people here are based geographically very diversely. We're spread out. We're not on the same campus. We're not on the same in the same communities, but we have a common interest, and we've seen really how beneficial it is to have that conversation with someone. So imagine how useful it would be to have that same conversation, but with someone who is at your university or lives in the same town or city as you, part of your local community, and someone who you can then build that relationship up with for the long term. So I'd really encourage you to go and have a one-to-one of at least one other person in your student group. And that might be someone you know really well in your committee, or it might be a new member. I think both are really beneficial. You will probably find out every time you have a one-to-one with someone, you still find out something new, even if you feel like you know that person quite well. So that's like a nice easy one to kind of start with, is someone in your student group. And I think we'll really, if anyone here is on the committee of their student group as well, we'll really enable you to get to know your members a bit better. I really want to encourage you to go and have a one-to-one with some students who aren't in your student group as well, but who could help you with your campaigning. So they might belong to another kind of student society on campus. They might be, as for example, student union officer, someone who you've seen about, maybe you know them, maybe you don't, but kind of set up a meeting with them to chat about how you can work together and basically have this one-to-one conversation with those people. And then finally, have a one-to-one with someone who's in your local community, but not on your university campus. And you can use your community map from the last session to identify who that might be. It might be someone from another community group campaigning on a similar issue. It might be someone from a faith organization. It might even be, someone who is doing something really interesting in your neighborhood and you'd like to link up with them. And if you missed the last session and want to know a bit more about community mapping, Elaine's just shared a link in the chat. You can watch back that session, or you can just download our community mapping handout, which should give you some pointers for how to kind of map out your community and who to look for. We have got to 4 o'clock, and that is kind of the end of the session. So I really want to thank everyone for giving a couple of hours of their time on Saturday afternoon to join us. I've had a really nice time, and I'm sad that I wasn't actually in those one-to-ones and can kind of experience firsthand how they were going, because it sounds like they were all really well and benefit. They felt like a great benefit to everyone, which is really nice. If anyone has any final questions or things they'd like to clarify or ask at the end, I'm happy to I'll stick around for a few minutes and you can ask any questions or type them in the chat. We'll also share this recording round to everyone as well afterwards, and I hope to see you again at a future session. But yeah, have a great rest of the weekend, everyone. It's really nice to see you all, and I will see you all really soon.